You ready to rock and roll?
Ready.
Oh yeah.
Alright. What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of A Couple of Subs. I'm your host, Cody Crane. With me as always, my lovely co-host, Kristen Crane, aka Kiki.
What's up, guys? Thanks for tuning in to another episode. So before we get started, I got to give a huge shout out to the Roost Hotel and the Wilbur Bar. We're at this awesome spot in downtown Ocean Springs. They let us record here today. If you have not been here, you got to come check it out. It's by far one of the coolest hotels on the Gulf Coast. So come check it out, book your stay, and they're actually getting ready to move.
Yep. The Wilbur is now soon to be 701 Craft.
Okay.
On Danville by Mikey's on the Bayou.
Okay, yeah, they're almost on construction and about to move in, so whenever they get open, go check them out for sure. I had to give a shout out to them first. And then my next shout out before we get started too is to Wilson Kalmus, who introduced me to our next guest, Mr. Gordon Thames with Arbor Properties. So I recently got the opportunity to be the interior designer on the new residential development at the Great Southern Golf Course in Gulfport. And Wilson introduced me to this man right here, Mr. Gordon Thames. So,
Well, thank y'all for
welcome
having
to
me.
the show.
Thank you so much for being here,
Yeah.
Gordon. So, real quick, tell us and our listeners a little bit about Gordon. You know, where you from, where you grew up.
All right.
family.
Gordon grew up in Montgomery, Alabama, and I had a very nice family upbringing there. I was such a stellar young man. I got sent off to an all-boys boarding school, but actually turned out to be one of the better things ever happened to me. It really installed a lot of what you call regimen, getting things done basically. And that has stuck with me and made college much easier, made most everything in my life, built a solid foundation to go on. And from there, I went to Brown University, graduated from there, went to Vanderbilt University Law School, graduated from there, took my first job down in Fort Lauderdale, Florida on an unexpected interview that was rather impromptu, but I was young and why not, right?
Right.
So at the practice we were in there, most of our clients were in the moving business. The issue was what they were moving. And so you wouldn't have thought that was a very good preparation for business, but it turns out that there's a whole lot of negotiation and a whole lot of problem solving involved in that line of work, which is very common, I think, to what we do now. And probably like a lot of people in this industry, I'd started out summer jobs, working a lot for my family business, which was in construction, spec home building, specifically in Montgomery, Alabama. And I don't know whether that gets in your blood or whatever, but sooner or later, you found yourself wanting to trim back to, I enjoyed the practice of law. I was paid well to fight somebody else's fight, but I really get a lot more satisfaction out of building something and creating something new and renting it. And now we have an awesome team, and just trying to keep everybody rowing the boat in the same direction is probably my main job.
Yeah.
And we have just a great group of people that are accomplishing a lot of good things, and the reason they're here is that every one of them can do their job better than I can.
Yeah.
But I'm open to your questions from that. Our general contracting is a little different than your average general contractor.
Sounds like you have a little analytical sense about you.
Well,
Like the way things operate, the way things move. That's what it is, running a business.
yeah, no. Look, I feel extremely blessed. I'm happy. I'm doing what I want to do. I have a great family. I wouldn't have predicted the path would go like it did, but somehow or another, you end up in a really good place you like. So that's kind of a great outcome to me.
Right. So let's start from the beginning. So your dad started Arbor Properties, or was it Arbor Construction?
Well, he actually, we morphed into that name. He started a company called Pelzer Homes, which still is around today as a building company.
Okay.
He started that back in 1957 in Montgomery, Alabama. So Pelzer Homes has been around longer than I have.
No
Yeah.
doubt.
So,
Is it like 65 years?
Was that, yeah?
something like
You're
that.
the math person. I'm not the math person.
That's a
I'm not
Long
going
time.
to admit to that many years on my birth certificate, but yeah, no.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was more construction and spec home oriented. And then when I came back to work with him, it was just he and I and a little girl, Diane, and she would answer the phone. And this still goes on to this day, of course, if you're a family business.
You and your dad and reception.
And one lady, she would answer the phone and she'd go, "Do you want to speak to Mr. Thames or Gordon?" And to this day, it's probably still that way. Everybody in my company calls me Gordon.
Well, that says something about you too.
Yeah,
no,
that's right.
Well, I try to be approachable, and most of us worry more about what we don't know than what we do know, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I want somebody to be able to, if they got a problem, don't feel intimidated about, let's put it up on the table and look at it.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So, all right, so your dad started this home building company, and then I think it was the 80s or something like that, he started developing apartment complexes?
Yes, probably our first one we built in, I want to say it was 86 or, no, 88 maybe.
Okay, so you two together started developing apartments, is that correct?
Yes.
And then you left and became a lawyer?
No.
No.
I got out of school.
Okay.
And like so many people, and we talked to a gentleman at lunch today that said when he went to school, he wasn't any more interested in joining in his family business than a man in the moon.
Yeah.
So I think my father actually, I might have been fulfilling somewhat of a dream of his to become a lawyer.
Mm-hmm.
But once I did that, I went off and practiced law and was down there doing just fine. And I was determined never to call him and ask him for a nickel.
Right.
But at some point in time, he and my mother got a divorce, and he was doing some work in Tallahassee, Florida. And long story made short, I moved to Montgomery originally, was working with him. I just figured out there wasn't a whole lot of shade under that big magnolia.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I moved to Tallahassee where, there could be some shade on this magnolia seed.
Mm-hmm.
That was funny. Like my dad told my oldest brother Ty, whenever he went to college, he's like, we don't want you to come back to family business. We want you to go be a lawyer and come be our lawyer. So my dad wanted my oldest brother to go be a lawyer also.
It definitely helps to have that background.
Oh, absolutely. And in the path that has come my way, it's helped in more ways than one. But early on, he'd get a speeding ticket and then hand it to me and go, "Here, you go handle it."
Get
Right?
figured out for
But yeah, I never thought one of our specialties would be working through hurricane issues. But it has been tremendously helpful in that.
Yeah.
Just because anyone's tried to collect a hurricane claim, especially a significant one, knows that Mother Teresa doesn't work in the claims department.
One day UNICEF may get into the hurricane relief deal,
Well,
but not today.
That's
Not
right.
today.
That's where they want you to go collect initially. Though.
Yeah.
So how did you get to Mississippi? So y'all started developing apartments. Did you start in Alabama doing the apartments?
We were doing more of them over in Tallahassee, Florida.
Okay.
And my father at that time had a little Cessna 182 RG plane, just a simple little single engine plane. And he said, "Come on, son, let's fly down to Biloxi." So we flew down there, and I'm like, "What are we going to see?" He said, "They got this new thing called the Biloxi Bell, and they're legalizing gambling." So we went up there, and I don't know if y'all were here when the Biloxi Bell originally tied up, when they initially opened. But it was basically a glorified shrimp boat with a couple crap tables and maybe a blackjack table.
Oh, really? That's cool.
You gotta
And-
start somewhere.
Yeah.
Got to start somewhere.
Yeah.
So what I remember about it to this day is we're on there, and you're throwing the dice, and a wave hit the boat, and the boat rocks a little bit.
No
And the
way.
dice are on the side of the table, and he's like, "Son, this is where we need to be." And I'm like, "Well, Dad, we built our apartments, they're stuck to the ground. What happens if they untie the Biloxi Bell and she motors on off?" And he said, "No, this is going to be better than New Orleans. It's clean, it's safe, all these wonderful things that people that live on the coast and know about the coast know intuitively."
Yeah.
So we went and bought the first site in Long Beach, and that was when the Beau Rivage was going up, and we've just been consistently kind of building one after another ever since. And of course, the more I've come here, the more I like it. If I didn't live where I live, it'd be a serious consideration about whether I'd live here.
Mm-hmm.
So intuitively, I like it a lot. It's easy to come over here and visit.
Our laws are loose.
People don't hassle you as much in
Carry a
Mississippi.
beer on
Yeah, you can
Street.
walk
And the
around
food
with
is
beer.
good. There's a lot of good things about Mississippi that most
So-
folks don't know.
Do you think it was your pop's eye just kind of feeling the vibe around here that, whenever y'all went on to that boat with a couple craps tables and wave at you, like, was that kind of what led him to this area for sure? And did that, I guess what I'm trying to ask with the apartments.
Right.
The apartments, did that kind of start here, or?
Well, we had started a couple of them in Tallahassee, but I think we'd done 4 or 5 of them there, and we're looking for, maybe a little spreading out and getting to a different market so you didn't have all your eggs in one basket necessarily. We had one in Montgomery back then, but he came down here and I don't know, there's his eyes lighting up or instinct, but part of our business, at least on the development side and finding where you're going to build the place, it's a little, you can do all the science you want, but some of it's a little bit of heart and a little bit of art.
Yeah.
You're like, this is a beautiful corner. I mean, this is where you want to be.
So you actually might have just kind of tiptoed me into one of my other questions I had for you today. So finding a place like that, like what y'all are doing now, the Great Southern, do you have a team of people that are like searching for these opportunities, or is it just keeping, being in the know with the right people, or?
Well, I would say a lot of it's relationships. Because I do have a lot of people we deal with regularly here, and a couple people called me and told me it had gone in foreclosure and it's coming up, and I might want to take a look at it. And so, but when you ask about a team of people, it's basically me, and you'll talk to Christian in a little while. But our company's very flat. We don't have many people in our main office. It was 4 of us, me and 3 ladies, and then Christian and my son Gordon have come there. So now we're up to a whopping 5 or 6. But for the volume of work we're doing,
oh my gosh,
it's not hard to stay busy because there's always some falling off the end of the wagon. But it just seems to run better that way. You make quick decisions. I mean, we don't call everything right, but I told Kristen earlier, I will call it. Mm-hmm. And we make mistakes. Years ago, I read a book about the Marines, and they were kind of like, part of their function, I probably won't do this service, but they teach their people in their business. Of course, you stand around, you might get shot, but they're like, you need to keep moving forward and pushing forward, mm-hmm. and going to make a quick decision, and the ground you gain will outweigh the mistakes you make. And not only that, you might stay alive.
I love
so
that.
So ours is not quite that drastic or dramatic.
The ground you gain will outweigh the mistakes you make.
That's sort of
I love that.
Key to us. I mean,
I love it.
We when we bought the Great Southern, we had about 4 or 5 days to look at it, and so, we were in a room with 17 other people, and the mayor looked at me and said, "If you buy this," and I'm like, "We're just hunting for something. If it's not a nuclear waste dump." And pardon my French, I told him this is a grab your balls kind of deal.
Yeah.
Because you got to close on Wednesday, and so we closed on Wednesday.
Those are the ones that that end up bringing the most profit, or
Well, that's why I go back to that heart and art part. You're like, you go out there and say, what part of a golf course with 1,000 feet on the Gulf that has all that history?
Yeah.
I mean, what's there really not to like about this? It sits right on the line between Gulfport and Biloxi. You couldn't be any more central on the coast.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, maybe I've been living right because this opportunity came this way.
Right.
I like to blame all my good fortune on clean living.
Clean living and your,
I love it, clean living. It's funny.
Yeah, But I mean, part of that is just, if there's an entrepreneurial or an art part of the business that you say, kind of like he said, this is going to be a good spot looking at Biloxi Bell.
Yeah.
My son might say, oh, how'd he do it? But it didn't take a rocket scientist to look at that piece of real estate and say, I mean, one of the realtors we went and talked with later, Christian and I, she looked at me and she said, I hope you know what you have here.
It's amazing. I mean, knowing that it's the oldest golf course in Mississippi and the second in the United States, that's something, I mean, that's unreal. Like, that needs to be treasured, and that's amazing.
The Great Southern, and then, what is it, out on the little point around Oregon?
Ooh,
yeah.
The oldest golf course. I can't remember.
Okay.
I'll get to Oregon one day. I haven't been there yet. But we learned something today about it, that back then, it's the only golf course that on the tee boxes used crushed oyster shell.
Yeah.
I learned that today also.
I did not know that prior to today, and you'd think if you bought the place you might know something like that, right? But I mean, it's really cool, and so with your wife's help, we're going to try to incorporate that as part of somehow where it's attractive in the clubhouse, but gives homage to Woodrow Wilson and other folks, who played golf there in the past. It does have a history.
Man, that's
no one's trying to trash that history, but it just wasn't economically viable anymore.
Yeah,
exactly.
It's got to make sense in dollars too.
It has to make sense,
yeah.
and this is a great new development. I know that A lot of people are excited about it, and a lot of people have questions, of course, naturally. But that's just part of it, you know. You gotta move forward, you know.
All of us in life are, you know, life's a bit of an evolution. Capitalism's a bit of an evolution. I mean, what once worked as a golf course, people could point fingers and have a lot of blame. I'm not into all that blame, and you know, believe it or not, as a background of a lawyer, one thing we're very proud of is we've had virtually no litigation fighting in our own camp after building 4,000 apartments, 16 different communities. So that's not to say we don't have a fuss every now and then in the house, but we work it out. We don't go to blows over it, you know.
So from the get-go, have you always been like the developer and the contractor?
Pretty much, yes. We dealt with one contractor, and since we're on a public show, what'd your mama say? If you can't say something nice, you don't say anything at all. So, but the point is, the lesson of that dealing was that it was, you know, no one was going to care more about it than you.
Yep.
And when we do it ourselves, I mean, if you're making supper for yourself, you might mess it up, but you're not going to mess up your dinner on purpose, right?
Right.
So, and so, I mean, as the general, that is a separate corporation, but somewhat tied, you know, by common ownership to a degree to the developing entity, the interests are much more aligned. And so there's not, usually you have the general contractor's agenda is a little different than the owner's.
Sure,
you know?
yeah.
So you get everybody in the canoe, and I say most of my job's trying to keep everybody rowing the canoe in the same direction. And our management company is run by, for the most part, a bunch of really cool and tough professional women who are great at their job. And our construction side, even though we have, you know, a few women there, it's mostly a man's world. And if you turn your back on those two for about 3 days, I mean, it's like cats and dogs. They'll find a reason to go clawing at each other, you know. So you just try to remind everybody that we're all in this together, you know.
Yeah. Well, so whenever you started, started the company, what were your goals for growth at the time?
You know,
how young were you whenever, like, that part of it?
When we started the apartment thing, I was, 88. I was 28 years old.
Okay.
So I thought at that time, man, if you could get to where you owned 1,000 units, you would be, I'm trying to find a clean word to use, the stuff.
Yeah,
right? Yeah. And so, but the old saying is once you get to the top of one hill, you'll always be able to see further. And to this day, I mean, you know, I sign every paycheck, every check, we pay weekly, subs included, you know, and above every check it says keep making it better. Because I mean, we all want perfection, but we never get there, right?
I love that.
I love that too.
You're just trying to keep making it better. And so my other saying, a lot of times people will go, oh, it's a foobarred mess. And I said, well, what we're called to do is do the best we can where we are with what we have. And so you just take that and say, okay, what's the path forward? I mean, that's at least my personal approach. I think if you can get your team to kind of call things, solve problems, whatever you want to call it, pretty much like you do it. It's like the successful, how do you get the culture out there? And so, you know, one of the sayings I love, because when we've had insurance companies where we've had to go to litigation in the past, they're like, how do you stand a chance against, you know, some of the biggest insurance companies in the world, and I can't name them because of certain, you know, confidentiality things. But one of my favorite sayings, it says, an army of deer led by a lion is to be feared more than an army of lions led by a deer.
Yeah.
Wait, say that one more time.
An army of deer led by a lion is to be feared more than an army of lions led by a deer.
Yep, okay.
So even though it's a bunch of ladies and they look kind of South Mississippi and, you know, we talk slow and all that, it's easy for someone to underestimate you.
Oh, no
doubt about that.
You know.
Yeah.
So, I know I'm rambling, y'all.
No,
have another question.
not at all.
Whenever you said that made me think of a merging manager leadership course I was in, like Pennsylvania or somewhere. And I'm the only Southern guy in there, of course. Well, about 2 days into this deal, the guy, you know, up there talking, he asked the whole guy, he's like, I tell you what, everybody, what did y'all think of Cody whenever he walked in today? And one guy stood up and he went, oh, shit. I couldn't have got more red in the face. And the guy was like, yep, that was the answer I was looking for. He said, just because of the way you talk.
Mm-hmm.
He said, I feel like being from, New York, I got you. I can make you do anything. I can make you walk like a puppet. And the whole time he was saying that, I was like, I'm glad you think that, because I can make you walk like a puppet, because I know how you think now.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
there is that
you're
perception.
right about that. That Southern, that's just kind of the first thing people think about sometimes.
Well, I don't want to sound sexist at all, but I mean, I would contend that the team of ladies who work for me are tougher than most men.
Oh, no.
I mean, I know that sounds nowadays everybody's going to decide what sex they are and all that. Who knows how improper we all are, right?
Exactly.
But it's a situation where, you and me might be easy to underestimate, but when they twirl that blonde hair, apparently that's even easier to underestimate.
Well, so the Great Southern is the second residential development or multifamily that you've developed, correct?
Well, on the multifamily side, Christian will give a more exact count probably, but I know it's over 4,000 units, 16 different communities, and these are ones that we've had our hands on and built and created, and we're continuing to grow, have a growth pipeline that hopefully will take us beyond that.
Right.
To give credence to my father, he had built about 2,500, maybe 3,000 single-family homes in his career, mostly up in Alabama. So our young team has just finished a 134-unit subdivision in Tallahassee. We have a couple more set up to come online there. And so for our young team that we have working on this, and one of the joys of my life is that now I have Christian, my son, and a youth movement going on in my company, so they're basically doing all of that. So for them, that would be an accurate statement. This will be the second one.
Right.
But there's an 86-year-old man in Montgomery that has a few thousand under his belt.
Yeah.
And so we get some input from him too.
Of course, absolutely.
And that's invaluable.
Yeah.
Yeah, isn't that the most frustrating thing about parents? They're usually right.
Hate it every time.
I mean,
Every time.
And I can see my parent, like my dad, if my granddad said something, luckily I still have him, he's 82. He still looks at my granddad like, damn, he's still smarter than me too.
Oh, yeah.
It falls downhill type deal.
And it will what I've noticed, you can take Donald Trump, any of these people, but these real estate family companies, there's a lot of family in them.
Mm-hmm.
When you saw that, and it kind of maybe exposed in the last presidential thing, but there's lots of people that start in that and get drawn back to it, me included. But no matter how accomplished you are, you're still the son and he's still the dad, right?
That's right. Yeah.
100%.
Every day.
And in your case, you got the granddad who is over that.
Yeah, he still puts his foot down whenever he needs to.
Yeah, no, we get input from my 86-year-old father almost daily.
So that kind of sparks something too. Like, how have you seen what y'all do in our industry, seeing, growing up, watching your father do it? And I know y'all changed from, residential to multifamily to, bigger developments, but how have you seen like our industry change from what he used to have to do? I mean, blueprints used to be blue.
Yeah, 12 pages. We used to build a whole community off 12 pages of blueprints. Today, you get a big old fat roll, and if there's not 200 pages in there, I'm probably wrong. You've seen them.
We're on a job. We're like RFI 172 or something right now.
Yeah.
Golly, that's a
No,
lot.
and one thing that's different, because I know y'all deal with independent contractors, we tend to have a more direct relationship, not only we have superintendents and that's our direct contact, but a lot of the subcontractors we work with, there's probably about 80% of them are the same job over job. And we
That's
pay
how
we
you
over
build a team.
and we have we've helped a lot of really good young people start their businesses because one hurdle for that, for someone who's maybe a young electrician or whatever, is I don't have the money, I don't have the resources. Well, we pay weekly. So we're like,
That's
if
big
you'll
deal.
listen to our superintendent when you get hard-headed,
Yeah.
he'll get you across the line.
Yeah.
And by the way, if you make your payroll weekly like we do, and the other reason I like that, I sign, it keeps you in touch with the kids, right? Signing every check.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing is, if there's some BS like a lien or somebody's not doing right, not paying who they're supposed to be,
Mm-hmm.
when you're in a 1 week time frame, that's going to bubble up a lot quicker than if you're in a 1 month time frame.
Yeah.
Because 1 month time frame, they can fool you for a month or two, and now you're 3 months into it, right?
Can you say that one more time?
That was
I
really
wish
well
everybody
said.
thought
I know,
that. That's
I
amazing.
know. That was
No, I'm just saying, but you've seen, a man when I first started told me he was a HUD inspector. He said, Gordon, you'll learn in this business that most people are wanting to do the right thing and whatnot, but there's about 1 in 50 just flat don't have the right thing on their mind.
Yeah.
And he's long since passed on now. But I gotta say, he's probably not too far off. I've been lucky. My ratio's been probably higher than that, but that's because we work with a lot of the same people over and over. But usually what happens, and we had one case where a man took the money and bought a peanut farm with it instead of paying everybody. And then they show up and want to file a lien on your job because he went and did something wrong. You don't find out about it for 2 or 3 months, so now the number's $700,000 or $800,000.
Oh goodness.
But when you pay weekly and you're getting those
You
things
catch
weekly,
that.
it's not going to run to that
They don't
number.
get out in
Yeah.
front
It
of
doesn't
you.
get, so it's a more manageable problem. And it lets us do business with a lot of younger subs that frankly might not otherwise think they could bid our jobs and
Work
whatnot.
their tail off for you, but can still afford to keep their business afloat.
And I went to a good friend of mine's funeral not long ago, but his son is still working for us, so it's a second generation sub.
Oh wow, that's
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
That
Yeah,
still,
that's great.
and I don't know what percentage of his business bills to something else, but it's, it's that long-term relationship. I go back to trying to keep everybody kind of, aligned, if that makes sense.
No, it does.
We were talking about that the other day, actually. Relationships comes up in almost every single podcast that we do. It really does, because that's so important. And I think the last one that we did, we were talking about, there's some, people our age in our generation, they don't do business that way.
Not all of them.
Not all of them. You're right.
Most
there
of them don't.
There are some, but there's a different mentality that I feel like our generation has. Like it's not about relationships anymore, and that
Well,
we
my
don't-
kids-
What can you do for me?
Yeah. But
What can I get out of you?
I worry about that a little bit, because if you think about, now I grew up in Alabama, but, when you read about the history of this country, there were first like Italians that came to New York. And then there were Irish people. And there were Oriental people. And all these people come through New York because that was like this big. Now some of them, came from Ireland and came to the South through other ports. But when we were growing up, everybody got called a name. Or somebody would poke you in the chest and pick a fight with you.
Oh yeah.
And so, at the risk of being highly inappropriate, how many names did people in New York get called? And so that made them a little more determined, tougher. Maybe they were determined to show somebody they weren't everything they're being called. And I'm not prescribing name calling therapy for our kids, but I'm saying when my children went to a school where if the two kids were going to get in a fight on the playground, the minute one of them balled up his fist, they were put in time out and scolded for, to some degree, being boys. So, to me, what I learned growing up, I was a small guy, but if a guy picked on you, all you had to really do was hit him in the nose and hang on for dear life. And later, girls may be different, but I always ended up being really good friends with anybody.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? You could probably say the same thing, Cody. Now, girls, they might carry that grudge a little further from what I've heard.
Most of my best friends
wired
have been in a fist fight with me before.
That's what I'm saying. So that you get it done real quickly.
My oldest best friends, definitely, we've all been in a fist fight before.
But I have a daughter, and she's like, Dad, you can't do that. It's not politically correct, or this is a safe zone, or whatever they say at the school they go to. And I'm like, what are you going to do in real life when it's just you and somebody else and they poke you in the chest anyway? So I worry about it a little bit when you say that relationship. And of course, they want to look it up on the internet.
Yeah.
When I think a lot of those relationships still get down to, like one of your prior guests said, that you need to get to know the owner. Well, in our case, everybody's dealing with us is more or less pretty damn close to the owner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think our reputation brings us a lot of good people because after a while you're going to get paid if you do the work. And if you don't, you probably won't last long.
Right.
Yeah, you're not going to be able to continue.
But it won't be a long, you know, kind of like dating. This won't be a long 2-year relationship. It'll either be real good for a long time or next batter up, right?
I think
I love that mentality because like we grew up like that. Our family businesses that we're a part of, like we've done and still do. We've worked with this company for 20, 30 years now, and we've seen that mentality in our generation fade a little bit, and
that's how FL Crane actually spread out. Is we were following a contractor.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Us too.
That contractor said they were opening up a place in Texas. We needed, somebody we can trust in Texas. All right. We went looking for real estate, opened us up an office right beside them, and then they had to go somewhere else, Louisiana, and so we kind of just moved around with them.
Bingo. We have a lot of them that have traveled back and forth and still superintendents and whatnot that make kind of a Tallahassee, Mississippi loop. We also do a lot of work in Bay County, Panama City, that area. So, every year I feel like a really lucky guy, but to some degree in construction and development, I mean, it's like you work at the circus. I mean, you got picked up for another year, right?
Yeah.
So the clown gets to eat this year too.
Well, so you're kind of in a unique knowledge point of our industry. You've lived and worked with 3 generations. How have you? I mean, I know we're talking about the relationship things. Kind of, it seems like it's dying off with the younger the generations get, and I know technology's just been absolutely crazy. But what's something that's just kind of sticks out to you from seeing 3 different generations and how 3 different generations react to problems and handle business, and like, is there anything that just sticks out to you?
Well, I mean, first of all, the answer I give you today at the age I am is probably a lot different than the answer I would have given you at 30. So I'm talking about somebody younger, and you're like, I'm not going to take that crap. And all that when you're young. I think with a little bit of age comes some patience, some wisdom. Some of that, you try to be a better person. So for me personally, it's been getting more patience and trying to take a longer term view of everything. Like the people we work with, I mean, Lord knows what the plans are, but we're starting a relationship, and Lord willing, we'll be working together for a long time.
Right.
The best way I can show my kids that is just to show them that, be that. I think earlier we were talking, I read something, and a guy said, before COVID, and he was an astute businessman, I think head of SeaWorld, and he said, all my goals were do goals. We're going to do, 14% ROI or certain metric type goals that are very common in business. But then he said more lately it's become more about B goals. And by B goals he meant I want to be a good father, a good person, I want to be someone worth following. We're going to be, so last night we had a company party, and I read something from Oprah Winfrey, and it says, you'll find a lot of people want to ride on the limo with you, but what you really want is people that'll ride the bus with you if that's where you got to be.
Yeah.
And so we're trying, and I thank all our people for being that for our residents.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like you just want to be, part of it's a be and a do, and we would like to, we really, numbers are important. It'd be irresponsible not to make a profit, right? Because you got so many people depending on you for a paycheck.
That's right.
But it's not the holy grail that Arbor Properties worships at, like, we got to be at 18% rather than 17%. I mean, my life's just as good at 12% as at 20%. I mean, maybe I could have more money in my pocket, but for the most part, how many steaks can you eat in one night, right?
Exactly.
Right.
I mean,
you're comfortable, and after a comfortable point.
I mean, I like to fish some, so I got a pretty nice boat.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not huge.
Where do
it's
you
not
keep that boat at?
over at Alligator Point. Yeah, but it's Christian fishes with me on it. Other my son, but at some point it's that longer term, view, and the best way I know to show. I mean, someone asked me the other day, they go, "What's your secret sauce?" And I told them, I said, "Well, really kind of dumb." I said, "We build them too big and we rent them too cheap." but is this a great country or what? It's working out anyway.
Hey, it works.
Yeah, you know. But
That's funny. I like that.
But it's that long-term view, and so we've got a lot of people living with us that have been with us. You know, in apartments, you have like a 3-4 year average industry turnaround. We were at a party last night, and 3 people that have been with us 20 years, 4 or 5 people have been with us 15 years, and you know, people wouldn't stay there if something wasn't right about it.
Right.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, that's one of the best affirmations that whatever we're doing, it's more
something
right
right.
than wrong. You know,
Yeah.
does that make sense? I mean, we're as human as anybody.
That's
we make
right.
mistakes. You
So
know?
I feel a lot of the time like I don't have a you know, talking about running a business, managing people, and the people are managing the jobs, and the jobs have numbers.
Yeah.
Those people know, like, all right, I'm making money or I'm losing money. Well, and we know that too overall, but there's not a daily check or a daily deal where it's like, I did a good job today, or I didn't do a good job today. And I kind of, like you said, I kind of look at the people and I'm like,
You know, I read something the other day, and a guy named Bruce, and I can't recall his last name, but he founded Discount Tire. Y'all probably have those around here. We have them all over where we are. Well, he's kind of a country boy, tire-looking, kind of big old guy from the picture I saw. I never met him or knew him. But he said, my motto has always been, you take care of the customer first and the spreadsheet last.
that's right.
And that doesn't sound real smart to a lot of Wall Street types. But the article later said when he died, his estate was $5.1 billion. So kind of like we built them too big and rent them too cheap.
Yes.
Somehow it worked out all right for him.
Yeah.
Right? So I think that long-term people gravitate to something that's good. You got to have a little faith in that.
That's right. Well, which one? So, all right, apartments, and then like your residential
Single-family
part.
homes?
Yes. Which do you enjoy more? As
Personally,
the role that
me,
you
I
do?
mean, what I've done, and you know, they say dance with the one that brung you.
Right.
I mean, all these ladies here, some of them have been like Erin Brockovich, and we got, you know, working together 20 years, you get close to everybody.
Yeah.
So to me, I'm partial to the multifamily
Mm-hmm.
side. But what's really nice about this is the single family side is a pretty cool operation. It's quicker
Yeah.
money.
Yeah.
I mean, the multifamily side is a get-rich-slow program, you
Mhm.
know. But Christian, Gordon, others, the younger people in my family, they're more or less running that single family. So to me, that's what's cool about that is watching them do it,
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, so that's what's cool about that. What I personally kind of feel I have a greater sense for, the Ouija board stick, whatever.
Right.
You know, the multifamily's what got me where I am, so I'm probably not going to stray too far from that.
Yeah. I don't blame you. Well, that's awesome. I've like really enjoyed
I have too.
getting to know more about your background and your history and everything, and yeah, like working with Christian, I agree with what you're saying. You're letting them kind of run with it. I've enjoyed working with him on the Great Southern Project and everything. And before we kind of wrap up, we always like to ask, being in the position that you're in, what advice would you give to the young people out there watching this? They're wanting to get into the development side of things.
Or
What would-
just
or
get into being a business owner.
yeah, business owner, entrepreneur. What would your advice be?
Well, I would echo a little bit about one of your prior guests said that some people might think that's what they want, but there will come a few moments here where it's downright scary, or you might be broke and nobody else knows it. So you've got to, in my case, I think you got to really, like what you do a lot,
Mm-hmm.
to a point where you are willing to fight for it. And at some point, almost be self-delusional about it.
That's got a little bit chill box.
No, but I mean, and by that, what I'm saying is sometimes you just, you know, it looks pretty damn dark, and you got to still convince yourself you can win the game.
Yeah.
Because I read a lot of stuff by football coaches because they're having to motivate 90 young men to come together and accomplish something as a team, which is somewhat common with what my position does,
Mhm.
just as in business. But one thing stuck when they were behind in the game, and the coach looked at them and said, "What's the most important play in the game?" And this young kid said, "The next play, coach." He said, "That's exactly right." So people say, "What's your favorite project?" I said, "The one I'm working on now."
That's right.
You know, and it's great that we've done all this in the past, but the game we're playing is right here and now.
Yeah.
and you might be down by 21. But that's when you got to have a gut check and say, am I going to hang on?
Yeah.
And push it through? Or is this, the heat's getting a little tough in the kitchen, maybe I wasn't built for this? So I'd say make sure, you're...
Don't quit, keep moving forward.
Yeah.
Well, and you're that committed, because some people, I brought something, and this is a little irreverent, but I have a daily calendar, and it says, the name of it is Unfuck Yourself by John Bishop. I brought it here, and it says, if you want to do something truly great, you'll have to accept that some people are going to think you're delusional, an idiot, or righteous.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you got to be good with that. I mean, you got to be so committed to what it is your dream is, your vision, whatever it is. I mean, restaurant, building.
You have to give up things. You got to sacrifice.
Yeah, you got to sacrifice. I mean, at some point,
It's hard to keep a good balance, but there's times you have to.
Yeah, we
You got to be somewhere.
Yeah, after Katrina, we rebuilt 1,100 homes here on the coast, and it's really when you sort of got connected, felt you're part of it. And we feel like we made a big difference in the community.
Absolutely, you did.
But my wife's like, you got to give up some time at home and whatnot.
Yeah.
And they're saying, aren't you taking this a little too far or whatnot? And that's what I had to go back to the self-delusional part. You're like, somehow I'm going to keep all that together, and I'm going to accomplish this. And I got some insurance company flipping me the middle finger, and I've got to go over here and whip them too, all in the process of a big juggling match, right?
That's right.
And most anybody that, I read something by some guy in North Dakota, and he said, anybody that's had a business has had a, quote, moment of non-liquidity, right? Which is kind of like, oh shit, I can't make payroll.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that happens to you once and you'll start saving your money. I don't know if you've been there or not. I wouldn't recommend it, but it'll put a gray hair on your head.
Yeah.
It's
But my point is, what we do is tell people what you can do, and you work with them and you got through it.
Yeah.
That's right.
So now to this day, people come in and go, I can't do that, whatever. I'm like, well, okay, it's nice to meet you, but what I really want to talk to is somebody who comes in and says, yeah, this is what I can do.
Yeah. Yep. Can't never could. Isn't that what they say?
Yeah, something like that. So I don't know if that answered your question. I mean,
no, absolutely.
So if you really want to own your own business and do all that, you're going to have to sign some bank notes in this business anyway.
You're going to have to.
I'm guaranteed repayment of $48 million. Okay, I don't have $48 million in my pocket. Right? So I hate to go back to the nut grabber, but I mean, I got to.
I'm going to go find some people that I can, convince to come and help me build the bar.
Well, it might be 400,000. It might be 4 million. It doesn't really matter what the number is. The point is, you're going to sign up for some additional pressure in your life that right now, when you're on a payroll, it isn't there.
Mm-mm.
So that's why I'm saying, it's wonderful. This is America.
Mm-hmm.
Calculated decisions, but don't be afraid to take a risk.
Well, and then, try to be as smart as you can about it. We're definitely a little more conservative now. We definitely keep a lot more cash on hand than we used to.
Think 2 or 3 years.
Yeah,
at least.
there are things that we're blessed and fortunate to do, but, some of that came down a road that had a few bumps on it.
Right. Just never giving up was there ever a time where you thought, oh my God, this is just not going to work out?
Oh yeah, when we were after Katrina, and I don't have to tell y'all because y'all lived here, but the Mississippi coast was devastated, right? And I remember meeting a fellow who's we're still friends. He came from Washington, D.C., came in from Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac, I won't say which one because it's just, and he came down here and I picked him up at the airport, and I think I was driving with him and I had $48 million in mortgages in a pile of sticks to show him for collateral, right? So we're driving down there by the terminal at Gulfport, and you turn the corner and you see chickens in the trees and the boats blown up. I mean, if you were here, you might remember it. I don't know if y'all.
It was God awful.
Yeah, it was just.
I lived in North Mississippi, but we came down here and brought supplies and did it.
Chicken guts out of the boat from the harbor up in the tree, so it had a nice righteous smell to it as well. And so you went down to this place. Well, I'm so nervous talking to this guy, and we're like, "Hey Ted, how you doing?" And I had a little Acura MDX, and of course this is maybe not totally appropriate, but my construction guys told me, they said, "Boss, that looks like a lady's car." So remember the truck nuts they all.
Yeah.
So they tied a pair of truck nuts on the back of my car. So here I'm driving the Linder along with the truck nuts.
Those are coming back in style.
Yeah, dangling off the back. And like you're nervous as a cat on a tin roof because you can't repay this money right then, right? And then I didn't even know it, and my car went off the highway into the sand, and he was like, holy crap, his eyes big as saucers. And I looked at him and I said, I bet you're wondering where I got my driver's license, or even if I have one, right? So we started laughing. We got to the site over there at Arbor Station, and the place was, devastating, really. I mean, 3/4 of the building is just off the slab. Really good ad for that vinyl flooring. That was still on the slab,
Nice.
But we got there and there were soldiers, that strung wire along the railroad tracks. Well, one of them came in and he goes, I just got back from Iraq. He gave me a hug, had a tear in his eye. He said, this is worse than anything I ever saw there. And so the guy's looking, the guy leading us on the tour was a fellow named Murray. Now he had on a shirt, and on the back of it showed one of these, what happens in deer camp stays in deer camp. I remember to this day, and it had a silhouette of a naked lady behind the curtain. It's one of those classy T-shirts. I'm sure you've seen a couple of them.
Good one.
And so I looked at him and I said, so you want to clean up this mess, or do you want me to? I mean, if you want me to get out of your way and hand you the keys, I'm not going to fight. I mean, but if you want me to clean up, I'll stay here till the cows come home. And of course, his eyes were big as saucers, and he wanted that air-conditioned Washington, D.C. How do I get out of this hellhole at the moment?
Yeah.
Who can I pawn this off on?
But it's a seriously good relationship to this day, because we got the place cleaned up. We, against a lot of odds, they had already written off $13 million on Fannie Mae's or Freddie Mac, I forget which one, their earnings, and that came out on a public thing. And when we came out of that litigation with the money, they had to restate their earnings because it was a material restatement. So I came in after everybody had already written off that you couldn't repay it and put the money on the desk. And so we still do business with them to this day.
Wow.
But